welcome everyone to the fourth episode of our Writer's Journey, our live author meet session exclusively for the Ink and Quill Collective. Our guest for today is Aanchal Malhotra. She is an oral historian and writer of historical fiction and non-fiction, primarily focused on the 1947 partition and its relevant topics. Her works include Remnants of a Separation, In the Language of Remembering, and The Book of Everlasting Things, which have received critical acclaim and have been read and loved worldwide, with one of them being me. So she's also the co-founder of Museum of Material Memory, a crowdsourced digital museum tracing family histories through heirlooms, collectibles and antiques from across the Indian subcontinent. If you haven't visited the website yet, please do give it a visit at museumofmaterialmemory.com. Welcome, Aanchal. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we are really thrilled because we have lots to unpack. It's not like always we get a historical fiction and non-fiction writer around, so we've got several areas to cover. Okay.
That's daunting.
It'll be fun though, it'll be fun. So just to give you our outlook, like our writer's journey, we will briefly converse about 6 areas of your journey as a writer, which include like ideation, first draft, editing, publishing, and moving on to the next project. Following that, we'll have a Q&A with our members. Okay, awesome. So I'd like to start with your transformation from an artist to a writer, which probably started during your dissertation for your MFA program and the inception of the first book, Remnants of a Separation. So could you tell us something about it?
That's a great question, and in fact a lot of people don't even realize that I trained to be an artist, more specifically a metal engraver. And I spent nearly 9 years studying things like engraving, lithography, bookmaking, paper making, book binding, handset typography, screen printing. So for those of you who have read Everlasting Things, there's a lot of book arts in that. That's where that section comes from. But towards towards the end of my MFA, my artwork started becoming more textual than pictorial, looking at how text can almost resemble imagery, whether that is through embossed text or text art itself. And I think I was thinking more like a writer, but it's always a bit difficult to switch genres, particularly if you've never written anything before. And I think I was thinking like a writer because I had done so much research for Remnants, as that was my thesis, and I had interviewed so many people, and those interviews and those voices were in my mind. So I was thinking more towards text and dialogue versus image and form. And it was one of my professors, his name is Eric Simon. He lives in Montreal. He's a great artist and writer. He was the first person who told me that, I don't know why you're trying to separate the two things, because an artist can be a writer and a writer can be an artist. And I think in my head until then things were quite separate. But sometimes you need the confidence of someone else to tell you that this is possible, and I think that those words that he said were really important to me, and I started believing that I could write. Of course, the difference between a writer and an author is also magnanimous. So I began writing with no real skill of writing, but I don't feel like I lost any of the skills of the visual art along the way. I feel like I still use them very much even now.
Yeah. Sorry, I was on mute. But I do see your Instagram page as well as the museum website and everything, that you use pictures to represent a lot of information and the things. Going to the next level, now that you've moved from art to the creative writing sector, what made you go for non-fiction as a medium to express this material memory instead of jumping into fiction?
I don't think that question ever arose on writing fiction, because I had done so much fieldwork for Remnants, which was my thesis, and those were real people and real stories. And I think also, for me, the intention in writing fiction and non-fiction is different. There is not only a difference in the style and the genre, of course, but also the reason why you write in a particular genre. So I was very clear that I wanted the stories of the real people that I had recorded over the last many years to be present in their voices and not in any fictional lens. See, it was because until then I feel like I knew about Partition in such a distinct way that these stories that I had recorded made it very intimate and made it quite diverse in the kinds of stories that were available to us. None of those had been taught to us in school, and I found it matters, it matters who tells the story, it matters who listens to the story. And I think the voice is such an essential part of this kind of storytelling that there was never a question of wanting to fictionalize it at all, at least in the beginning.
Right.
My intention was always to represent the stories in the voices of people who told them to me.
So that's a really interesting thing you said out there. And in your research, you have relied more on oral history than written history, right? How do you manage multiple truths that occur in that process? Because you'll be interviewing different people, they might have different version of the same experience, right? How do you handle that multiple truths?
I feel like oral history is a medium that allows for that. In fact, its strength is its diversity. And let's forget oral history for a minute. Even when you study archival history, when you go to an archive, when you look at a particular historical event, there will be differing archives on it. There will be different things that people have written, and we accept all of those as multiple versions of truth, and we don't ask this question. We don't ask the question that, how do you deal with so many different versions of the same event? However, somehow when it is a person telling a story and another person telling another version of the same story, we feel that actually, which one of these is really true? And at the beginning of my career, I was really invested in answering this question about historical veracity of someone's testimony. And now it doesn't really interest me that much because the way somebody remembers and lives the history is their perspective of it. Even two siblings will not have the same perspective of something.
True.
Because of different age groups or just different interests. And those two versions are acceptable. And I think all the multiple versions of the God are acceptable. In fact, with Partition, it is only through these versions that you really understand what the event had, just the ginormous scale of the event. Because a Pakistani's version will be quite different from the Indians, will be quite different from Bangladeshis, and within that, the different religions, different communities, different castes, different classes, different genders will have different versions, and they are all acceptable versions of the same event, which is why oral history as a methodology allows for those stories to exist simultaneously. And it wasn't really that difficult to navigate them. The minute you accept that, I guess it's perspective, right? You just don't have to question whether this person is lying or not, because that thought never arises. The thought is, another perspective that I can learn something more about the event.
That's really illuminating. That was really good. Now coming to the point of your research work, right? What would your advice be for someone who's new to field research, particularly interviewing on sensitive topics with people of a certain community?
It's a very simple advice, but it's an often underappreciated art of listening. Don't think we know how to listen to people any longer because we are in our heads thinking of the next thing we will say. But when you are embarking on a project that involves speaking to other people, you have to take their voices into consideration. And often I found that I didn't really like relegating everyone to the same interview questions. I mean, I had a kind of mental questionnaire in my mind, but often my questions were born from their answers, which meant that I really had to pay attention to what they said So I think one piece of advice is listening. It really does matter, and it helps the person to know that you are an active listener. You're actively present in that conversation. The other thing that helps with interviews is to do a bit of research about the interview itself. Like for instance, if I was going to speak with somebody who had migrated from, I don't know, Sindh, I would do a bit of research about that area, particularly let's say Hyderabad or Sikkim or something. I would do some research about that area so that my questions could be quite specific to what they had experienced rather than a general overall question. I think that helps, and it really does matter to people.
All right. And coming to the idea concept, the last thing that I want to ask you is regarding partition. I mean, you had your own personal stake in it because you come from a family who has experienced partition and has had a lot of stories to tell. But imagine writing on a topic in which you were in no way connected, right? Say for example, let's talk about an American Revolution or something of that sort, right? How, if you were to approach such a topic in your future work, how would you incorporate, would it be the same, or would you first go through self-read and everything and then reach out to people for collecting the conversations?
It's a good question. I think even within partition, there are so many things that I don't know.
True.
And I can speak only to the Punjabi perspective, and that too to a very specific class from the Punjabi perspective. That's personal experience. So when you're interviewing families from Sindh, or families from Hyderabad, or families from present-day Bangladesh, or families from Kashmir, or families from, even the other side of the border, different parts of Pakistan, it's all new for you. Right? And you have to research no matter, even when you speak to Punjabi families that are different from you, it's new for you. Like I feel like my family is, they are like city folks, city Punjabi folk. But if you're speaking to someone who grew up in rural Punjab and also migrated from rural Punjab to across the border, that's a very different perspective from me. So I don't feel like I need to go so far as the American Revolution. I feel like even within the gamut of partition itself, there's plenty of things that you don't know. And firstly, it's okay to say that you don't know about them because that acceptance is really important, and it also helps in the process of unlearning things.
True.
When you interview people, I think yes, you learn, but the process of unlearning is really vital because we all live with bias and prejudice, even though we may not think we do or we may not realize it. So I do think that the acceptance of this is really important. And there were so many stories that I wrote about, particularly in the language, like in this book, which I felt were really different from how I was raised and my own background.
So that's great. So I'll now move on to the draft section, and before we address the blank page of a first draft, I would like to tell my viewers that Aanchal is known to be a very meticulous organizer, and I would like to know your advice in organizing a mountain of research notes, audio clips, and other information. Do you kind of use specific apps or anything? Please go ahead. Yeah.
No, I am not so technologically advanced by any means, but yes, you're right, I am very organized, and one of the reasons why I am so organized is because I usually deal with hundreds of oral testimonies, and it's just really easy to get lost in them.
True.
It's very, very easy. So usually what I will do is after I record something, I will take it off my recorder, put it on my computer, organize it in a particular folder, with the person's name, with any images that I've taken of that person. So it's all in one place. I don't usually transcribe the interview immediately after because I feel like I need a bit of a break, a little bit of distance. Maybe I'll transcribe anywhere from a week to a month after, and I will transcribe and then translate the interview to English. So in the transcription as well, I will usually write out my interview in either Hindi or Punjabi or Urdu if I can understand. If it's in a language that I don't understand, I have hired people to help translate in the past, or I've also asked friends. I only hire transcriptionists if I can afford to pay them. So I think a lot about fairness when it comes to works. So if I have small budget to pay transcriptionists to do interviews that I can't understand, I will do that. Otherwise, I'll ask friends to do it, and then I will translate that into English. So any kind of regional transcript that is not in English will have the regional language and English right underneath it. Because when I write, I like to refer to what a person has actually said.
True.
Sometimes inserting words, sometimes expressions, and I think as South Asians we speak, we mix our languages, right? Our sentences have mixed language, and I think when you're writing oral history, this is really important. The texture of our language, the way we speak, is really important. What else do I do to organize? Yes, I organize my notes in my notebook also. I can show you. Each interview has a tab, so I will organize them. I also, I have pretty good writing because I know I have to read my writing later. A lot of people take notes and they don't realize that they actually have to read them after that. Something to keep in mind. Do I do anything else? I don't think I do anything else to organize myself. The thing is, I can't think when there's clutter around me. I can't think. And I think this is primarily because I'm so scared of getting lost in all the stories that I've recorded that I need them to be decluttered and in their own place. So whether it is my desk or the inside of my computer, it is all quite organized.
Alright, this is awesome. I like a lot of learning points out there.
This is what works for me, I think other people work for other people.
Yeah. But so talking about writing the first draft, is there some sort of a writing routine that you follow, or you try to keep it flexible?
Number of words per day or things like that?
Yeah, something like that, or like a morning routine or an evening routine, or sometimes you just switch it or something of that sort, or?
I don't have any number of words I need to hit in any given day. I just feel like that adds a lot of pressure to me.
Yeah, is it a good thing though to think along the lines of word count per day?
No, it works for some people and it doesn't work for others, and I feel like I shouldn't be saying anything for or against because everyone is a different kind of writer.
Alright.
So it doesn't work for me because I feel like there's a lot of pressure, and I feel like then I rush my draft and I don't enjoy it. But when I'm writing all the time. There's no I'll probably just break for meals. I'm writing all the time from morning to evening, and I'm usually I go to bed thinking about it. When I'm sleeping, I dream about it. I wake up thinking about what I've written. At night, if I can't sleep, I will wake up and make a voice note. I make a lot of voice notes. Things like that. I make a lot of voice notes about. When I'm writing, I'm really in the text. So sometimes a single sentence that you've written will stay with you because it bothers you, because it's not the best possible manner in which you could have formed that sentence. So I will find myself waking up in the middle of the night and reforming that sentence and saying it out loud. When I write, I read everything out loud, especially my first draft. I read every single thing out loud. I will do the languages if I can. I'll do the accents. I'll do the different characters' voices. Because I feel like when you read things out loud, you can read the intonation of the sentence. You know what the sentence sounds like. And if you've repeated yourself, let's say in a passage, it becomes very clear. Because you can hear it. And you say, oh wait, didn't I just read that?
Yeah.
So you'll never see me in a cafe writing my first draft. It's never going to happen because I'm reading everything out loud.
That was great. So now we'll move on to the edit section. Alright. So in the book of Everlasting Things, you juggled with multiple themes: partition, calligraphy, perfume making, right? So how do you balance out multiple themes in a plot for historical fiction without causing the much dreaded info dump? right? Because or like again the question also comes to the point that you're writing historical fiction here, right? So does that genre give some sort of like leeway for information, like the amount of information that you can put up, like the description of the past and a lot of things compared to other genres? What do you feel?
Well, fiction is really difficult for me, I'm going to say that. It's very hard for me, it doesn't come naturally to me, I need to work at it. And it's primarily because I'm used to being a field researcher. So I'm used to seeing what I need to write about and then reproducing that image. And I think you take a lot of things for granted in that, mostly how much or how little history you have to insert in it, because the person in front of you is giving you that history. Or the history that you write is in relation to what they have said. Now, this was definitely an issue I faced when writing in the last things, that how much history is too much history.
True.
And what I find helpful is to write everything that you want to write and then start taking things out. But I edit as I go along. So I will probably write out a chapter, edit that chapter, edit it again and again and again until I send it to my editor. There's no way that I'm going to send like my editor, oh, this is just the first draft, here you go. I'm not that kind of writer. And when I edit, I print everything. Sorry, I got this because I thought it was helpful. I print everything out loud on the page, usually printed two things on one page to say pick up, print the other side also. And you see, I edit by hand. I'll use the pen, I'll edit, and when I've used something in a text, I'll cross it out like this. I'll cross it out so I know I can't use it anywhere else. That's what works for me, particularly with fiction. Like I think because writing about partition, there are so many things that are similar in terms of feeling about partition, feeling the separation, feeling the longing, feeling something for homeland. That when you think of how one feels towards it, there are very similar words that come up. When you write something in a particular way, I feel like if I use it in a novel, I cross it out because then I'm not going to use it in another chapter. I'm not going to use it for another character. It's done. It's gone. But I need to keep track of that. Also, when I edit chapters and I remove things, I don't discard them, but I put them in another document to be able to use them somewhere else, or just to be able to refer to them. No, I do want to say this. When writing historical fiction, just keep in mind that you're not just writing about a particular subject. You will also have to speak around that subject when you're promoting your book, or when you are talking about writing the book. So even if you don't have a particular piece of history in the text, that's fine. There will be ample opportunity for you to speak about it, for you to share that knowledge with people, because I think particularly when it's a first novel, people want to put a lot into it. I wanted to put a lot into it, like the novel was so much larger than it is. Because it's your first thing and you want to know that, like, you show people that you know all of this information and you can make it well and put clever. But it's not always necessary. So just keep in mind there will be ample opportunity for you to talk around the novel as much as about it.
True. One of the best things I liked about the Book of Everlasting Things was the olfactory description of the perfume, right? Usually the struggle of describing such things is that what are the right words to use. You'll have to experience those senses, right? Did you go through the process of experiencing them yourself, or did you capture research?
No, I'm like a slave to my research, unfortunately. I'm very much like you that I feel like I need to feel the things, I need to walk the places, I need to count the number of steps in order to write about them, because I think it will be authentic. So, yeah, but it's a lot. it's a lot. So I spent 5 years working on everlasting things, and it's primarily for this reason that I was working with a perfumer who could speak to the specificity of vocabulary. I don't know, like before I wrote everlasting things, I didn't know that smells could be outerly and clean and viscous and there's so many ways to describe a smell. We just say it smells good or it smells bad. But in fact, the world of olfaction is so rich, and it has such a cemented vocabulary that immediately means something to people that are in that world. And I wanted this book to be authentic, so that when a perfumer reads it, they say, "Oh my God, this is what I learned." It's exactly what it is. Yes, this is a great smell. Yes, when you combine this and this, you do smell this third thing. So I spent a long time working with the perfumer. I also visited most of the places that I would not. Like when Sameer is sitting in a park in Paris, I sat in that park and I decided that this would be the year or the season that he would sit in. These are the trees that would grow around. When he's walking up to his apartment in Paris, the number of steps is the number of steps that I was staying in the apartment. So I just feel like when you do write from reality, it is far more authentic. But that being said, I know that is a very privileged way to work, and not everyone has access to that. So I feel like even writing from pure research is fine. Like I didn't live in class in World War I or World War II. I managed to write about it through researching not archives of the time, but I looked at a lot of diaries and journals of artists that spent time in class, and also for photographs. I looked at a lot of photographs. So the research material does not have to be limited to the archive, the official archive. I love reading people's journals because they were really interesting, and artist journals particularly are far more unique than others, I think.
That's really cool. It's good to know a person like you who's very visual, who gets a lot of information from visual objects and then translating instead of just reading sentences, right?
Exactly. This is what I meant when I said that I still use that visual art language, because that's all I've been trained in. Like, if all of your formal training is teaching you how to see things, then that's honestly, you can't lose that, I think.
Alright. Okay, coming to non-fiction, what has your experience been with literary devices to liven up the narrative, apart from the style of using an interview format in both the books? Like, did you experiment with something, or did you find something useful while trying to, edit it?
Can you elaborate on what?
There are various formats, like the similes I use, metaphors in fiction, for example. So those are there, but in you have an interview ready, and you are now translating it into a non-fiction book right now. So to make that entire interview even more engaging, instead of what was the question and answer, do you employ certain techniques which you would like to share, or do you just put it as it is?
No, I think this is the difference between someone who studied literature and someone who hasn't.
I haven't either, just asking.
Okay. No, I do never think I'm so clever with my interviews, Maybe because I feel like that oral testimony is so precious already that there's no reason for me to play games with it. Often the person's, if you personally believe that the person's voice is the most powerful vehicle to bring forth an idea, then I don't think that you will need anything else. Like, I'm not writing creative nonfiction. I'm not writing narrative. I am writing narrative nonfiction, but it's based on interviews, so that's why it's categorized as oral history. And I don't really think, apart from my intervention, there's any other device that I use per se. And I think in Remnants, I used even less of that, because I felt like there was not so much need for me to intervene in the interviews, because that generation had not had the opportunity to speak. Whereas in the language, I felt myself intervening and actually adding to the narrative a lot more, because these were people of my generation, and I actually related to so many things that so many people were saying that it sort of unnerved me, that people were, everything that I was thinking, other people were also thinking, and in different iterations. So I think apart from that kind of intervention, I don't think I used anything.
Alright, that's cool. So now, no, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think the one major decision that I took in the language was how to categorize my chapters. And I think that really defined the narrative, because they are not categorized as per nationality or religion or any other community. They are categorized as per emotion. So you have a chapter on belonging, you have a chapter on fear, on love, memory, on reunion. And I felt like if you start thinking about, this person is Pakistani, this person is Indian, this person is Bangladeshi, this person is American, or from the UK, I feel like a lot of other boxes will also dissolve, because if you have 3 stories in a chapter on belonging, they could be from anywhere.
True.
Emotions have no nationality, they have no allegiance to anything really. So I felt like that was a really important tool to employ to tell those stories, because sometimes when you're reading in the language, you don't realize where the story is from, because it's not categorized as per what you think should be the categories.
Alright, that's awesome. I have one last question about edits, which is, how do you decide an ending for a non-fiction book or a conclusion, right?
It's usually like the interview that stays with me. Like I've written 2 non-fiction books, both are based on interviews, and one ended on the image of soil, and the other ended on an interviewer asking me a question. I had interviewed this excellent young actor, Sabah Azad, and towards the end of the interview, she asked me, she's like, do you think that we have learned from Partition? And I said no, and I feel like that was such an important point to end the book at, because it really culminated the research into that single sentence that we are doomed to repeat that which we do not learn.
Nice.
But I think this comes to you instinctively. And I feel like we really don't give ourselves enough credit for how instinctual we are as writers, because when you're working on something, non-fiction particularly, when you start getting into your research, you'll know the start and you'll know the end already. At least you have a broad idea of what you want it to be like, because then that defines the texture of the book. Right? You know that you want it to be search for something. You know in your heart what the end looks like. You may not know the words, but I think that instinctually you know the end.
True.
I would say also trust your judgment.
Yep, that's very sound advice. So moving on to publishing. With respect to your first book, like when you did not have any history of any creative work that way, what was your journey like in the publishing industry? How did you approach them? Or do you have any tips for proposals, etc.?
The non-fiction proposal is quite standard in the sense that you have to have a proposal of your idea. You have to know what the contents of your book will look like. So it doesn't really have to be chapters, but it can be broad themes. And then you have to have a sample of your writing.
Okay.
So it's quite standard. But I went the very traditional route. I did have an agent, we did have an auction, and it was quite standard. One of the reasons why I went with Harper, and I'm still with Harper 3 books later, is because I got along very well with the editor who read the book. And I felt like he understood the writing. He also was very interested in art, which helped because I had just recently come from an art background. And I felt like with Harper, I have a lot of mutual respect. You know, I care very much about that relationship. It's not a purely transactional relationship for me. It's I understand that it takes time and effort and money that you invest in a writer, and I feel like I'm very grateful. But I also know that this is my bread and butter, so you know the relationship is delicate, but it is one that is very important to me, and I cherish it very much.
Alright. And does the experience getting published in India and abroad vary? Because in your book, The Remnants of a Separation, right, the title had changed altogether, like Remnants of a Partition. And there have been many authors who completely changed their story itself. So to what extent do you think changes are allowed for the same book to be published in different countries?
I mean, I really think that depends book to book. I know people who mildly change the book, might also, yes, as you said, the title, the cover, everything. I don't know, I feel like if it were me now, you see, the publisher abroad changed both the title and the cover of the book. And if it were me now, then I would have held on to at least one thing. I would have been okay with the title but kept the cover. Because particularly just solely for the fact that Remnants in India just had such recall value, right? And the UK US cover is equally as beautiful, I find, but then it got so much press in India because it was the 7th anniversary and it was a unique project. But I felt like now I would hold on to one more thing, but I do think I was too young at the time. Also, you gain confidence, the more you write, the more you publish, the more publishers you interact with, you gain confidence, and I don't feel any embarrassment in saying that. It's life. I'm a young person still, and many mistakes I'm sure I'll still make. But I think I was really taken by the fact that someone abroad wanted to publish me as a first-time writer, and now I feel like I know where my center is, and that center is not the West. My center is here. When I write for my people, and when I say my people, I mean Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis. That means a lot to me, because it is about things that we have collectively lived through. And I feel like I will advocate more for my presence here. Like, in the language doesn't yet have a UK edition. I think that's fine. And I think at some point, if it needs it, then it will get it. But I'm not losing sleep over that. Because every book has its time, it has its moment, it has its environment. And it's important to me that my books are read in the place that is my center.
Understood. Now, and the other thing that you experienced was getting your work translated in different languages, right? Congratulations on that. But how did that happen? Or is it like translators reach out to you, or does an author take an initiative? How does it work?
No, I would say that my agent is magic.
Do share the contacts.
Like your book is pitched to English language publishers, your book is pitched also to language publishers across the world, whether they are local languages in India or other languages in other parts. And the books have been published in French, in Hungarian, in Dutch, in Russian, Hindi, Punjabi. The experience has always been really wonderful, to be honest. I love the fact that other people are reading, stories about us, and they are meaningful to them as well, which really shows you that humans can surpass the borders of their own geography, I guess. But one of the loveliest translators Well, actually, two of my translators, I have a very good relationship with them. One is my Dutch translator, and the other is my French translator. My French translator recently won a big award for the translation of Remnants. I'm very, really proud of her. And my Dutch translator, after we finished working on everlasting things, she sent me an email saying we have been working together for 291 days. That's how long it took us to translate.
Wow.
It was amazing. She's so like meticulous, and she's so wonderful. And it's I think really a privilege to be translated into other languages and to build those relationships.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, like, that's inspiring as well.
For me as well. Like I learned so much when my book is translated. Particularly, I think the Dutch translation was happening at the same time as I was editing everlasting things. So she was also working, and I was also working, and a lot of things she asked about language, because translators have to be very specific about their language, particularly if they're translating into their language, right? It made me think a lot about what I really meant.
Okay.
So I feel like I really value this relationship because it teaches you about your own language, and often for someone, if English is a foreign language, they will be way more particular about the intricacies of it than you as a native speaker, maybe. And I say native speaker, and that's very ironic because obviously English is also not our native tongue, but it's the language that I think and dream and write in. So for that purpose, yes.
Alright. So I have one more question, but I'll pause it for now. We'll address the Q&A session because there are many out here. So the first question is by Manu. He's mentioned when writing historical fiction, do you worry whether readers will understand the real historical part in the fiction and separate it from fiction?
I don't worry about that. My reader is not stupid. I don't write with the assumption that my reader is stupid. My reader is a very sophisticated reader, and I have a lot of faith in them. So no, I think if you're reading carefully, you'll know. Or if it's a very good historical novel, you'll accept it as it is, right? So I don't think about that too much.
Alright. Next question is by Suman. He's asking, when researching history, there is this need to be exhaustive, which can mean you end up researching forever. How do you know which thread to follow and which to let go?
When writing fiction?
History. Like it could be fiction, I guess, like historical fiction, because that's the one.
I guess the contours of your research will be determined by what is necessary for your character. And I feel like you know yourself when you're just doing it for fun. Like, I did so much of research for fun because I knew that it was just for fun. And it was never going to end up in the book, but it's kind of addictive, Knowledge is very addictive. So you will know what you need to use in the book depending on the scene that your character is in or their backstory. So, and I think that's a very intuitive thing as well.
Alright. Okay, and next question is by Marva. How do you work on the language while writing for academia, say theses or journal articles, versus writing non-fiction for general people? Like simplicity of terms compared to academic jargon, sentence complexity, etc., etc.
It's a really good question. I don't really think it's so applicable to me because I didn't study academia proper, as in history or English or anthropology or sociology. I studied fine art. So my thesis had to be anywhere between 2 pages and 25 pages, and I wrote the 25 pages route, which my advisor thought was insane. Because also she was like a French person, and to read 25 pages in English is difficult for her, and so she read very slowly. But basically, because I was in a fine art program, my thesis had to be visual rather than written, and I didn't really have any of these problems with the use of language. But I feel like that question is better suited to like an active academic.
Alright.
Sorry.
Okay. Next is by Lena. Given the deeply personal nature of the stories you encountered, were there times you had to step back to maintain objectivity? Similarly, did you encounter your beta readers or editors asking you to edit something out because of the emotional nature of it? How did you handle these conversations?
To your first point, yes, there were several points when I had to take a step back. But that was mostly in the process of transcribing. You know, when you're listening to the interview again and you're transcribing, that's when because like when you're talking to the person, you need to focus on allowing them to speak as much or as little as they want to at that moment. When you listen to the interview later to transcribe is really when you listen to what they have said and the manner in which they said it and the language they have used to say it. These moments are really intense because it's just you and the voice. There's no distraction otherwise. And I do feel like I took many steps back. I took several weeks of steps away. In fact, and I think that's a very healthy thing when you're working on something so intense. Take the break. Take the break 100% when you have, what's that thing when you can't write? The writing.
Writer's block.
Don't write. Put away your manuscript for a week. Don't write it. I am not a proponent for working in a different way or approaching a different part of the story. Not at all. I just put it away and I start reading something else instead. I think reading is a great way to overcome these gaps and these voids, and it's usually very inspiring as well. So that, and your second question was what?
Did you encounter your beta readers or editors asking you to edit something out because of the emotional nature of it? How did you handle it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was not because it was too emotional. It was usually when the final manuscript means for a legal read and something would have been politically disagreeable.
All right.
Even then, there's a way to find a solution of it. You don't always need to edit it out. It's just a matter of finding it in a different way, perhaps.
All right. Sunil's question is, how do you avoid present-day biases or perspectives from creeping in or influencing your writings or interpretations?
You can't. I mean, the researcher is human, the writer is human. You can't. You can only preempt so many biases, you know. You can only be so careful. There will definitely be, there are so many times when I'm conducting interviews with people that I know, you know, in your head you're like, okay, this is the right language, these are the right words, but still you end up saying something you don't anticipate. You can't, and I'll give you a very good example of that, in fact. When I was researching in the language, I had an interview with someone who was a Hindu person born and raised in Pakistan. And throughout the interview, he kept using the words Pakistani Hindu to describe himself as an identifier. And I kept saying Hindu Pakistani. There's a difference in those two terms. For him, his primary identity is Pakistani and a secondary identity is his religion. I don't know why I mixed the two. Perhaps because we shared a religion, but then, you see, I didn't anticipate myself saying this. And it really caught me off guard because he was saying the opposite thing. So, I put it in the book. It's in the book as it is. I accept what I said. I correct what I said because it is very important to show the reader that the researcher is not exempt of bias and not exempt of faux pas or blunders. It happens. We are human and we are also learning and we are unlearning just like everyone else. So I don't think that we can prevent this.
Alright. Okay, the next question. Since you come from a family of booksellers, do you see writing as a sustainable vocation? That's one kind.
It's very important. I don't think you can shy away from the aspect of earning a living. I want to say that publishing is a very unequal business, and no two people will make the same amount of money. It's not going to happen.